Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome back to my beer series that I'm doing, the Beer Necessities. This is episode 2 and I'm going to do it a little bit about the history of beer. So beer has been around for thousands and thousands of years, and if I made a video about the whole history of beer it would take forever. There is far too much to talk about. So today I'm just going to be talking about the Sumerians, the Babylonians and the Egyptians. I feel like these three different civilizations and cultures really tie well in together. They're kind of all about the foundations of beer, how beer was made and discovered, and it should be kind of interesting. So enjoy! So we'll start off with, where did beer come from? Mead and honey wine most definitely came before beer. Beer itself, many people think that its creation was a complete accident. Some people think that they figured it out, they knew how to do it, and that they set up little places to grow grains to make beer. I personally think it was an accident. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I do. So like I said, before beer, mead and honey wine were really kind of the main thing. You'd need a lot of grains to make a lot of it, and you'd also need a lot of honey. This is in times before, bee suits and protective gear had been made, so it was quite dangerous to go out and get all of this honey. And there wasn't really a lot of notes and research that were noted and kept a record of at this time, so it's kind of really difficult to know what exactly happened, and all we can do is make an educated guess. So all these people were drinking mead. It lacks a lot of the nutrients that beer has. Apparently some of the first cereals to be made was barley, and looking back at them it's more likely that people didn't actually use these barleys to make bread. They would actually use it for brewing purposes. I personally think that the discovery of beer was an accident. I think this because it kind of makes sense that someone one day was making porridge or bread and they had these sprouted grains, the grains that had already gone through germination, and they'd added hot water into it, like I said, to make some porridge or some bread, and they'd heated it up, so the starches would obviously begin the conversion into sugar, and then if you leave it out it will start to ferment, and soon enough you've kind of got some beer. Yeah, it wouldn't be the nicest beer, but it would be beer nonetheless. Beer was discovered around 10,000 years ago, somewhere in Africa. The words brewing and bread are linguistically linked, which is pretty cool. So that kind of makes us believe that, yeah, it was an accident. Maybe they discovered beer when they were making bread, or, it's a very similar technique. They thought of it as the sort of same thing. In Mesopotamia, which is now somewhere where Iraq would be, this is where the Sumerians lived around 4,000 years ago. Now these people loved beer. They worshipped the goddess Ninkasi, the goddess of beer. And side note, there's a really nice beer by Wild Beer called Ninkasi. It's really nice sour beer. There's also a beer called Zintuki, which is kind of similar to Ninkasi. Zintuki comes from Ninkasi's sister. She was the goddess of food and dinner, which is pretty cool. There was a hymn to Ninkasi that was inscribed on clay tablets in the 18th century, and they have thankfully lasted so that we can still read them today. So this hymn for Ninkasi, it was a recipe for beer and is the oldest recipe for beer that we have. It basically praises Ninkasi for everything that she does. It kind of explains how she makes beer and how great Ninkasi is for providing us with this lovely beverage. The Sumerians would actually depict a load of things on the clay tablets. There were tablets that would depict them sitting drinking beer out of clay jars, and at the time beer was definitely more hygienic to drink than water was, and it had more nutritional value than a lot of food. In the hymn, Ninkasi bakes this bread called bapir. It seasons with dates and spices, and then she soaks the bread and she squeezes all the liquid out through a straw into a jar. Once it's fermented, it can be drunk out of the jar through reed wood straws. That's what a lot of people used. This way of making beer is actually still practiced in parts of Africa. It's very traditional, and yeah, people love it. The queen of the Sumerians, she was called Lady Puabi. She also drank beer out of the jars with the straw, although her straw, it was made from gold and lapis lazuli. Apparently that straw has been recovered and it's in a museum somewhere in London. I'm not sure which museum though, sorry. But from all this time, Beer literally became embedded in Babylonian and Egyptian cultures. So the king of Babylonia, he was called King Hammurabi. He created loads and loads of beer laws. These legal codes were literally steeped in beer. This played a huge important part in like loads of medical treatments and rituals and myths. Literally everyone at this time drank beer. Kings, queens, paupers, everyone, even tavern keepers had like really strict laws and penalties over overcharging beer. If you overcharged beer, you would literally be drowned, which is crazy. Could you imagine if that law was like still going today? It's crazy. The Egyptians as well, they were really like keen on their beer. They took it really seriously. Pharaoh Ramses II, he actually had massive breweries made in Egypt, and they made up to 30,000 barrels of beer a year. His cities were basically built with beer money, and up to 40% of the grain stores in Egypt were basically made for barley, for beer. Beer was a staple food in Egypt as well. The people who built the pyramids, they were paid in beer. They were given beer 3 times a day, and they were given up to 5 different options of what beer they wanted. I really liked some of the names that the beer had at this time as well. You had stuff like Joybringer, the Beautiful, the Heavenly. Kind of shows how they thought about beer. Beer was also used as money as well. People would give each other beer as a form of money, and like I said, the pyramid, the people who built the pyramid, they were paid in beer. Hello, sorry if my lighting has changed, my battery died and I just had to change it. Anyway, we're talking about the Egyptians. So the Egyptians didn't really believe in Ninkasi. They had their own gods, and conveniently they demanded drinking beer as part of their worship. Conveniently. You'd have to be really careful with who you drank with at that time though, because for instance, if a woman drank out of a man's cup, he would instantly be betrothed. Beer literally comes up everywhere in Egypt. It was in their paintings, it was in their pottery, it was in their medical prescriptions. They were even buried with it, because I mean, you can't really go into your afterlife without some beer. And it was mostly the job of the women to brew the beer. This kind of lasted from the Sumerians up until the Middle Ages. It was really, really important. Women were like really respected in the beer world. And that all kind of stuck until the Middle Ages, and then completely changed. I'll probably make a whole separate video about the Middle Ages and beer, and about women and beer, because it's both very interesting. Cool. That is everything that I can think is interesting and cool to talk about with the kind of development history of beer. It's really interesting to learn about. It's really cool to see like how beer started and how it's like transformed to now. I hope you have enjoyed this little episode. I hope it's been okay. Hope you have learned something from it, and yeah, if you did enjoy this video, please leave a like and leave a comment if you do have any questions, and yeah, stay safe. I will see you in the next one.